Alrighty, let's call this meeting to order. First item is the consideration of the September 12th meeting minutes.
Approval?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Alright, minutes pass. Next item, big item number 3. Market study needs analysis timeline. Bart, I don't know if you wanna, is there any?
Yeah, so we signed the contract with Nova Gronic after last meeting. We had hoped to get going a little sooner, but we just had some contract issues and a little delay in getting the survey, which is why we canceled last week and we're here today. Then based on that, I met with Rebecca earlier in the week and realized that their previous timeline had us having our town halls next Wednesday, which gave me no time or us no time to coordinate and promote that. So based on that, earlier in the week I had asked Rachel to give us a revised timeline, so I think most of you have that in front of you. So with that, I guess we can go through that and see if that timeline meets your expectations, particularly perhaps towards the end. We had hoped to get it done by the end of the year. Now we're pushing it into January. Rebecca can comment on how that aligns with strategic planning. I don't think it should be a problem. The one question that I have, I guess, for us and for Rachel is whether or not perhaps we can squeeze that back end of it a little closer. I don't know that we need a full month after the recommendations to review those, and whether that requires a special CDA meeting and how that works, but so that's the first part, I guess, of the conversation, is the timeline, just to confirm that meets your expectations of public participation and availabilities. And then with that.
So just on that, we
sure.
basically bumped it 2 weeks?
Yeah, so November 4th would be it. We had October 16th, so yeah,
Okay,
2 weeks somewhere in there.
so that makes sense. I mean, I think that's a reasonable
Yeah.
bump to give it enough time for people to. And during that during that time, do we have all of our mechanisms in place to communicate it? So is there a what happens in that window that we can utilize to make sure it gets communicated?
So I presume a lot of that's gonna be staff driven,
Yep.
In terms of how we've promoted the town halls for the transportation and parking analysis. We'll probably replicate a lot of that same
Would you say those
distribution.
were successful? Do you think that?
Yeah, in terms of pushing out the message, I would have hoped for more participation, but I mean, it was during the summer and other things interfered, but.
And it's transportation.
And to some people, this will be housing,
Yeah,
Right.
right? I mean, not everyone comes out in groves.
I think, yeah, I
Yeah.
think there's kind of less, so people care about parking, but, they already have a place to live.
So yeah, I personally felt comfortable with how much we promoted it. I guess if anyone else has any ideas, beyond that, I'd be happy to.
We'll hit pretty much
Entertaining
every
deals.
outlet we had.
Yeah.
Well, and then with that, there was no big, huge dust up or issue or anything driving any interest, I don't think, in any, so it doesn't surprise me that,
That's a good,
that
these are
there's
more
a-
longer term.
Yeah, this is strategic planning.
Strategic
Yeah.
issues that
It's
we're
even
working
more
on.
boring to be
Yeah.
able.
Usually things get driven by crisis,
I love
or
it.
like people
People
coming
are
out.
mad about something,
Yeah, right,
or passionate's a better way to put it.
that's, right, exactly, that's what I meant. There's no passionate issue driving attendance.
Did the consultant present any new idea of way that they use to get participation, or
Not necessarily. The online survey is their,
main way?
main mechanism for getting people up, at other times, but it's gonna be email distributions, newsletters, posters, phone calls, reminders, nudges.
Yeah,
I think the library, we don't have the civic information kiosk there anymore, but a lot of people use the library who are not online, and
Mhm.
okay.
so I definitely have, some kind of display and paper versions or real
Sure.
clear directions to get to the online version of the survey.
That's a good suggestion.
I think this list of people who they talk about contacting, these are people who are going to be really, have an interest and probably more likely to participate than your average Joe, so. I mean, I think working off this list is probably a good idea.
So yeah, in terms of that list, they mentioned developers, real estate agents, brokers. If anyone has specific people that they think would be good fits for this, I know,
Yeah.
in the transportation study, we had some good recommendations for our advisory group, that were offered by people. So yeah, if you know of people in the community, just send them my way and I'll add them to my list, or I'll give them a call and remind them, so, and I'll be bugging you in the meantime for that as well, so.
Well, and we can personally send out what, the link and
Yep.
kind of blast our network and.
Yep.
Cause we want just Shorewood residents, is that who's gonna fill this out?
The
Or-
survey is also intended for people who work in Shore, but once again, I'm not sure they're fully familiar with our community to
Right.
expect a lot of, school district, there could be teachers and administration that might not
Mm-hmm.
live here that would want to live here, but I don't know if it's gonna be a large audience.
So can I just get back to your first question on the timing?
Sure.
So I'm sorry, I'm sure, this whole thing basically bumps it by how much? 2 weeks?
Well, they did the
In
full
February?
thing by a month because they used your regular CDA meeting in
Yeah.
February.
Okay, so we could get it down to, if needed, be to the
Yeah.
2 week, if we felt.
Yeah, so they just used that as their, but I think if we wanted to squeeze it,
So I think this is, anybody have any concerns with, obviously December can be challenging. But I'm not sure we have a lot of options. I think this makes sense. We needed to bump it because we didn't have enough time, and so.
It's in the first half of December, so,
Yeah.
Right.
And it's, so that they won't be coming, it'll just all be web-based, and people can just watch a video and then respond to that
they'll be here for the town halls, in
November.
November.
Okay.
So I think this timeline makes.
And then we'll come back in January to
Yeah.
present.
I mean,
Okay.
I think if they're gonna do that, I mean, it cannot be an hour-long or 90-minute thing that people have to sit and watch. I mean, we'll have like 3 people willing to do that. It's one thing to have a meeting and you could come to a meeting, it's another to, I mean, this is a new and interesting way to push it out, which I think is good. I'm excited to try it. I mean, what if they told you about that, how they're gonna structure that?
Not much. I mean, we discussed it early on, just in terms of saving costs and not having them fly here another time. And they actually felt this would be a very doable way of presenting it. The advisory group for the transportation parking study, they called in for their last update as well, just to save time and costs on consultant fees. So I think it's doable, but yeah, needs to be well presented, otherwise.
Well, it's the first time we've ever done something like that, right? So there'll probably be some bumps, but it's worth a shot.
And then, so with your and my conversation yesterday about who's participating, so their current plan is that these stakeholders would be in the public.
Yeah, the intent, based on their presentation, or proposal, I should say, was to invite these to the town hall to participate in that conversation. Have the online survey, but then also follow up key stakeholder one-on-one interviews at some point in the process, so if they've identified, a touch point that they wanna drill in on. But yeah, the intent is for this large group to be at the town halls early on.
And again, my recollection from our conversation with them was that they were gonna survey. Do I remember the same? I thought we were all gonna be surveyed, and they were gonna survey one person from each. Remember, we were gonna, one person from the various constituencies, particularly the professional or the committees, was gonna provide that committee's feedback into the survey. So this is a little bit of a different.
I think you were
approach.
thinking strategic planning.
Cause, yeah.
Just for that one, we're also doing a survey.
A lot of surveys were.
I know, yeah, so, cause that's what I have for strategic planning,
Alright.
but I didn't have it for this one.
Okay.
And that matches my memory, and
Okay.
I reviewed their proposal again yesterday, and that is my take on it.
Who did we sit with in this room? That
It was
no-
the 3 of us and David, with Baker Tilly.
Oh, you're right, I'm sorry, it was Baker.
It's okay,
Right.
a lot of
I'm confusing
consultants.
my meetings. Sorry, right, okay. Okay, so that's fine.
So the only other question I had on the timeline is whether or not, at least, I mean, from my perspective, the rest of it worked. If we wanted to squeeze it closer, I could ask if they would come at the end of January just to finish it off, or they'll come for a regular meeting in February. I just didn't think that we needed a full, almost month.
Is it possible we're gonna run into other issues? You know, that there could be needs for,
True.
I mean, we've got a little buffer in there, you know, if we wanted to, as we got closer, I'm
Good
you know,
point,
if we
yep.
said we could hold a special meeting, or we could do something to push it more current, maybe we give ourselves a little bit of room at the end there.
I actually like that, just seeing how the transportation
Yes.
was kind of go in, maybe just leave it, and
Yes,
if we're.
I would just mention that to them.
Yeah.
We're fine with this, but as we monitor, we may wanna bump the, sort of the final presentation. If we're ready, to try to see if we can bump it up and have it done sooner. Okay, you don't need a formal action on this, right, just, you can go back
I
to
do,
them.
yeah, I think it's good to keep the time also because, I mean, the public input, it's sort of like they need the public input because it's part of their data collection. But once they have recommendations, I think that's an important place where, you know, people who are interested in this issue, like the group who wanna have supported housing for adults, you know, like I think that's gonna be another point where people are gonna wanna be able to have some input and some say on what, we'll question them as to what their recommendations are, so, because there aren't really any, they sort of structured the public input all up at the beginning, because that's when they need it for data analysis, but, you know, for their data, but that's not really, I mean, the public is probably more interested in what their conclusions are gonna be, so, I mean, I guess the presentation of recommendations could be we could structure actually an evening CDA meeting, you know, and have try to promote that and have the public comment.
That's a great idea.
I like that idea.
That's the one during December 16th,
January 13th.
or January 13th?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay, yeah. And all right, so we're good with the timeline?
Mhm.
Then just from a, you know, I've not done these before, obviously we have the survey, we can talk about that, so I'm trying to, I guess, wrap my head around it, because it seems to me there's different elements. The survey is gonna give us sort of people's personal feelings about what the village should be, which, while important and a component of policy, I don't know that that's what should be the primary driver of policy. And so our input we're receiving, the more, for lack of a better word, what I'll call the professional feedback, is happening in the public meeting and or in follow-up one-on-one interviews with certain people that we've defined. I'm trying to get my head around what are the sources of input that we need in order to have the best survey or best housing analysis possible. And I feel like we've sort of addressed the community's input through the survey, but I don't have
data collection.
I think it's up to Nocratic to provide us the.
Yeah, that's where I feel like we're
information,
lacking. I don't
and
know.
then we,
Yeah,
Does that make
Are you-
sense?
Are you saying that you haven't heard anything else other than the survey that they're doing? Is that the issue?
Well, other than that, and this, you know, they will do sort of follow-up interviews with certain stakeholders. That statement's been made, so I'm
But
assuming
I thought they were doing other.
Yeah, they'll be
like
drilling down in
research.
data, you know, whether it's census or whether it's local real estate data, they'll.
right. They'll get, yeah.
That I think will be driving most of where these questions and things come out of with the stakeholders when they say, oh, we've identified this, how does that,
Match up with what the data says.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Because that inherently is all, like, a little also true, like, we hear things from the public, but what does that mean from the
Yes.
data that's there?
Right.
And that's a lot of times a conflict that
Exactly.
Right, like one of
Exactly
the big
right.
questions I hear is affordability, like, is the village really unaffordable? Or is it actually affordable, or somewhere in between, you know,
Right.
that, to me, is just comparing, okay, if everyone that takes a survey says Shorewood is unaffordable, but the data comes back and says, well, actually,
Here's
you
where
actually
you
are
come,
very
yeah.
affordable
You're in the
compared
middle
to
or
your
you're
peers.
Mhm.
That, to me, it seems like what this is gonna come out with. in large part, is comparing public perception and either supporting that with the data or, I don't know, not necessarily refuting that, but just countering that to say, okay, the perception is this, but that's not really the reality. And that's kind of what I'm hoping to come out of this, is to kind of maybe put to bed some things, or just to identify other problems that.
Or know that they're, either way, know what the
Right.
reality of the situation
Know what the
is.
reality,
Yeah.
exactly, know what the reality is, not just the perception.
Yeah.
Not that perception isn't important, but
Yeah, from an existential perception, from an existential standpoint, it's almost like, you can get all this data that refutes the perception, but, people have these deeply held beliefs. You still need to deal with the perception over here. And people might-
But you're better off with data
Yeah,
to
yeah.
respond.
And
Yeah.
to that point, historically, I know that, I remember reading the old plan and having called out the exact percent of duplexes that were here as compared to other municipalities, which drove the decision to do the duplex conversion grant. So it was that data. Like, people may have thought, oh, there's a lot of duplexes here, but are there? So to have that,
Yeah, I get it.
spelled out for you and proof positive evidence to say, yeah, we do. And so here's how we can address that. That's, to your point, John.
Well, it also gets to, when we talked about, people who don't live in Shorewood but might want to live in Shorewood, and
Everyone.
well, but when we were talking about who's taking this, because I'm not sure how you get that to those people, but I'm not sure there's one question in here that's about, would you like to live in Shorewood or
Do
something?
you, well, there's the do you,
Yeah, so right, obviously it's affordable to most of the people who live here, cause we live here, So, but the question is affordable to who,
And that, the realtors could maybe help us with that, people that they've tried to sell